Once upon a time,
in a land far away.
I'm Katrina.
And I'm Geoff.
This is the Fairy Tellers Podcast.
Myth, legend, folklore, fable.
We explore what they say about cultures then and now,
Grab a hot cup of cocoa and a comfy seat
while we tell you a tale.
Welcome back to the podcast. Back at you again with another, you guessed it, exciting episode. I legit am excited. I really am excited pretty much every time because I just, love getting on here and talking to you, Katrina. Especially the 2 hours that ends up on the cutting room floor where we talk about stuff that absolutely is not fit for public consumption.
Indeed.
But also, I heard from a little birdie that is you that we're going to be talking about Giambattista Basile.
Yeah, I'm like, those episodes, there's always some good turn of phrase. And by good turn of phrase, I mean probably something disgustingly raunchy and 100% racist.
But also very well written and
Yes.
interestingly worded too. So it's a triple whammy.
Yeah. I was just remembering some of the colorful language in other episodes, but we'll talk about that in a sec.
It'll come up again.
Yeah. I was going to say for this episode, there is going to be a content warning at the beginning of this episode I mean, definitely one, racism. There's also infanticide.
Yeah. I mean, which when we said Giambattista Basile, you're like, got it. That is the content warning.
Yeah.
Content warning. We're talking about Giambattista Basile tales. And it's like, okay.
It's going to be unnecessarily graphic.
Yeah, it's like putting a content warning at the beginning of a Quentin Tarantino movie. If you're in the theater for that movie, you know what you're in for, you know?
Yeah. Hopefully you didn't wander in here on accident.
Tarantino, also a name of Italian origin.
Oh.
I wonder if there's something to that. In this master's thesis, I will be exploring.
I was like, quick, do not say something racist. But anyway, first and foremost, I was just going to tell everybody, check out our episode that'll be coming out on Not My Fantasy Podcast. I'm pretty sure that it will air before this episode airs. Maybe. And if not, then don't go looking for it. Just kidding. If it's aired before this airs, I'm going to post a link to it.
And if not, then you can keep your eyes peeled and you have the forewarning to know that it's coming. You can preemptively subscribe to Not My Fantasy, follow them so that you can be sure not to miss our guest appearance.
Yes, absolutely do.
Because it's sure to be a delight. Because it's not just us and Not My Fantasy. It is also us, Not My Fantasy, and Fairy Tale Fix. So it'll be 6 fantastically hilarious people all together. Having a good old time talking about the live action Disney's Snow White, which there's so much to say about it that is sure to entertain, delight, and disgust. Tune in and find out.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to get to, hang out with all 4 of them again.
Oh, 100%. We're going to have probably too much fun. It's funny because we're going to be trying to keep it to 2 hours. We'll see what happens. It should be hilarious and fun. So be on the lookout for that. And I will post a link to it when it comes out because no matter what, I'm going to direct you over there. But I would say follow Geoff's advice and preemptively follow Not My Fantasy Podcast on YouTube or on anywhere that you listen to your podcast. I like watching them on YouTube because I like seeing their faces and they usually pick fun backgrounds for themselves.
That's true. And I was going to say that it's an opportunity because we do not have a video podcast. Ours is audio only. So if you want to see our faces, especially, it's a special treat. I don't know why you would want this, but it would be a special treat because you get to see my face. Because Katrina's face is out there on other stuff, especially if you follow us on Patreon. She puts out Patreon only videos where she's talking at you with her face.
That's true.
And on the social media, that's how the cool kids are saying it these days.
I don't know if it is. I'm
the coolest kid there is, and I'm saying it that way, so.
I love the confidence at which you are approaching your life right now in this moment. You're like, it's a special treat. You get to see my face. Also, I'm the cool kids, and I call it social. What'd you call it?
Social meds. So if you want to see my
So
beautiful
sweet.
face, you can tune into their YouTube because you're not going to see it on our channel. I'll tell you that.
So I'm really excited about this episode that we're going to be doing today because this episode is probably going to feel like a big culmination of a lot of what we've covered on the podcast in the last 5 years. We're going to be telling a tale from The Tale of Tales, The Pentamerone by Giambattista Basile. And I will give the same warning that I give before we did episode 94 and 95. This story is going to be racist. So Giambattista Basile is going to be saying some awful things, and I'm going to be repeating them. Some of them racist, some of them sexual. I'll be saying them out loud with my mouth. Not because I agree with the thoughts of Giambattista Basile, but because this episode is going to be examining what we can learn about racism in the culture at that time.
And unfortunately, Giambattista Basile has been dead for like 400 years, so we can't drag him out and get him to say it himself.
Yeah. So I'll just do it. But I'll be doing it in English. He would be doing it in some version of Italian, probably Neapolitan.
Love their ice cream.
So sometimes I'm tempted when retelling a tale to remove some of the language that I find offensive, or if I think that the language will make the story less enjoyable for the listeners. But I'm definitely not going to do that today, because examining racism is the point of this episode. But I'm not going to say the N-word, Geoff, because the N-word's not in here, just so you know. I didn't want you to be nervous.
Yeah. When we said he was the Tarantino of fairy tales, like, not in that way is he the Tarantino.
Yeah. So I'm also excited for this episode because I'm going to be using the book Specters of the Marvelous, Race and the Development of the European Fairy Tale by Kimberly J. So, full disclosure, I received a paperback copy of this book from the publishers for free. I did not promise them anything, including producing an episode. So, this episode and any possible future episodes quoting from this book and looking at the research of Kimberly J. Lau will be because this was such a great book with incredible insight that I think that my audience will appreciate, and not because of any obligation that I have to a publisher or the author. It's purely because I enjoyed it, but I did want people to know that. So, anyway, the next thing I was going to say is that this episode is going to be a standalone episode, meaning that anyone can listen to this episode and not feel like they're missing out on anything. But I will say that one of the things that has been so delightful about doing this podcast for the last 5 years is that we've covered a lot of ground. One thing that is great about that is that when I'm reading a book like Specters of the Marvelous and they make a reference to Cupid and Psyche and how it relates to tales like Beauty and the Beast, we know what they're talking about and have done a fair bit of exploration on that tale type. And that is incredible because it gives us the ability to go deeper into the tales. So if people want to check out some of the past tales before or after listening to this episode, they might find it to be an enriching experience. But I will also be working to make sure that this episode is accessible on its own, because it has been 5 years since Geoff has heard some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I was just going to say, episode 14, Cupid and Psyche, East of the Sun, West of the Moon.
Which is a great episode. One of the, tops.
Yeah. Episode 27, Beauty and the Beast. Episode 94, The Tale of Tales, Part 1. And then episode 95, Tale of Tales, Part 2.
Two tales.
Tale of Tales, Part 2. Two tail.
As if there wasn't enough tail in that title already.
That was our only 2-part episode that we've ever done because it included the frame story for the Pentamerone, because it was part of the Snow White tale type that we were going over and reviewing. We did that tale specifically because of the incorporation of the colors, red, white, and black. And in those episodes, it was really important to understand that the frame narrative is constantly talking about the black and the white, the tale, the three citrons included a man who was looking for a woman that had the, what was it, red like the blood, black like the dead bird, white like marble. One of those in there. It was something like that. But the Three Citrons is the tale that mirrors the frame story for the Tale of Tales. So we had to like kind of include all of that in it. So it's a 2-part episode, and that frame story will be important for this episode today, which is why we're going to like briefly recap the frame story, because the frame story, and we talked about it in the episode too, it's racist. It's very racist. It hinges on the racism, and that will be important for what we're talking about today, which is the racism.
Yeah. And it, in fairy tale fic style, it doesn't have to hinge on the racism. It just happens that it does. Like you could tell this frame story without it being racist and it still works. But anyway, I'll be doing this recap today.
Yes.
And it goes like this. So the story is basically starts with the princess. Her name is Zoza, and she doesn't laugh. I don't remember if it says why, if she's just like kind of that way naturally. She's just like never laughs.
Yeah, some kind of, I don't know, childhood curse.
Yeah, and her dad, her father, the king, is like kind of trouble with this. So he like wants to make her laugh. So he invites all these people to come and entertain and delight her, but none are able to do it. And so he's like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? And he's like, I've got an idea. This'll be hilarious. I'm going to install a public fountain that shoots out oil. And she's going to find that so funny because it's going to cause a bunch of people to like slip and have these like slapstick whoosh, falling on ice moments, which, you know what, like he probably was onto something. I've watched many of those like, you know, slipping on ice TikTok compilations. If there was an oil fountain installed somewhere, like there would be videos made about it and I would be watching them.
Yeah. Top tier content was what he was trying to create for his daughter.
Yeah. He was ahead of the game. He'd have blown up on TikTok. He'd be making that creator fund money like crazy. So hilarious hijinks do ensue. An old woman stops by to soak up the oil, because that's the other thing about the oil. Like even more than water, it's like that's a valuable kind of thing to use, like in cooking or whatever. So it's like,
yeah,
if I can get some free oil, like I'm just going to go to that fountain where I can get some free oil that I can use. So an old woman stops by to soak up the oil, and I forgot this part. Like some jerk throws a rock at her.
Yeah, some like kid, yeah.
And it breaks the jar, which is like, okay, that's not, I didn't think that was funny. But then, you know, does she fall on the oil or not? I can't remember. Anyway, they start like...
Yeah, they have quite the exchange of words.
Yeah, they start like yelling like insults and curse back and forth. And like the old woman is super angry. And she gets to the point where it says she's so angry, like she's beyond words. So instead, as like the final insult that she can do to this court page who threw a rock at her, she, quote, raises her stage curtain and reveals a woodsy scene, which means she's lifting up her skirt to reveal what is underneath. And at that, Princess Zoza starts laughing, like uproariously. That's what could finally do it. And so while the father of Zoza is like super thrilled that this has made her laugh, it just makes this old woman even angrier, because like laughter was not what she was trying to get at with that, you know, profane gesture. Profane, is that the right word for it? Obscene.
Yeah.
It's probably a better word for it. Profane is like when you like make light of like something holy, I think. Which, I mean, depending on your interpretations, you could stretch it to include what she was.
I don't want to stretch it.
Okay. Anyway, so the woman is super mad, and she curses, literally, not just like, curse you. She puts a curse on Zoza that makes it that the only potential husband that she will be able to have is Prince Taddeo of Roundfield, who at this very moment is cursed himself, that has put him into an enchanted sleep that he can only be awakened from by a woman filling a pitcher with her tears in 3 days' time. Like within a 72-hour period, this woman needs to fill a pitcher with her tears in order to awaken him from the curse, and then whatever happens, happens. Which is like, okay, that's impossible, seemingly. But Zoza's like, I'm up for it, I guess.
Yeah.
Love a challenge. And so she sets off for Roundfield. And then along the way, she encounters some like magical beings that give her a bunch of like, I guess when I say magical beings, there's 3 specifically, fairy sisters who give her magic objects that can be used in times of need. And so I didn't remember this, but after 7 years, she finally finds where the enchanted prince is. So it was like, man, long journey. And so she starts on this 72-hour Feel the Tears challenge, which is all the rage on TikTok that didn't exist back then. And so in 2 days' time, she fills the pitcher up like almost all the way, but she's so exhausted from crying so much that she falls asleep.
Yeah, fair enough.
Which is like, okay, but it's like, 2 days, but she's so close. She's so close to filling it up, but she's like, can't do it anymore. She's like, I've got a whole day. I'll sleep for, 12 hours and then I'll wake up and then I'll be able to fill, I've got 12 hours to spare. I'll fill it up in like an hour, the last bit of the way, then, with plenty of time to spare. But, and this is when it gets racist, there is a, quote, cricket-legged slave girl who's been patiently waiting and watching Zoza and plotting to, quote, wrench that fine booty from Zoza's hands and leave her with a fistful of flies. So basically, here's what she does. She gently removes that pitcher of tears away from Zoza, who's like sleeping. I imagine like in a cartoon where they're like sleeping with their arms around and you got to like get it up and then like, oh no, they're accidentally like following it. Oh, like kind of a funny little moment, a funny little tableau takes place as she's trying to get the pitcher away from her. And so this slave herself finishes off, like tops off the rest of this pitcher with her own tears. And that brings Taddeo back to life, wakes him up. And so because she is the one that has like filled the thing, she didn't fill it all, but she was the one that brought it to full. He's basically like kind of like falls in love with her or whatever, takes her to the palace. They have festivities and fireworks and he marries her. And then Zoza wakes up, finds that this pitcher's empty and also learns about this wedding that she was supposed to be the bride in. And she's like, dang it. And she realizes, again, racist, that 2 black things had brought her to her downfall, sleep and a slave. Which in English, it has a nice like alliteration to it. Also, like sleep as a black thing is kind of like, I was like, what does that mean? I guess it's just because like when you sleep, you close your eyes and that's all you see. I don't know. Anyway, I don't get how that is black. But anyway, that's not the point of this recap. So moving on.
You being like, nah, I don't see it. Pick a better comparison.
Yeah. Zoza is no quitter though. So she is trying to find a chance to win her man because this is her curse is this is the only person that she can marry. So if she wants to get married, which apparently she does, like it has to be this guy. So she's like, okay, she moves into a house across from the palace so that she can hopefully like catch the prince's eye while he's out and about. And then, he'll fall in love with her because she's, I don't know, super good looking or whatever. I don't know. But apparently, he did see her out one time. Her plan starts to work. He sees her and catches her eye. No. Sees her and she catches his eye. That's right.
Yeah.
The slave woman that he had married recognizes this and she's like, uh-oh, like I can't have this. So she is pregnant, I guess, basically threatens to like injure or kill their like unborn child by punching herself in the stomach.
Yeah.
To get him to like stay and like not go after Zoza or whatever. So Zoza's like, what do I do now? So she resorts to her magical objects that she had been saving as a surprise tool for later. And this woman the slave woman that had married the prince wants these things. Yeah, she wants these magic items and is like, again, threatens Taddeo that if he doesn't get them for her, then she's going to like, kill their unborn child. So Zoza gifts these objects to the couple. And with the last object, she like, I kind of invokes the magic of it to instill in this woman's heart the desire to hear tales. And so the tale of tales is the unfolding of that desire because, the slave woman that had married the prince starts calling for like, she wants tales. So she's like, come and tell me your tales. I want to hear them all. And so then the rest of the tale of tales plays out by these, it's like over the course of 10 days. There are like 10 different women who come and tell different stories. Oh, over the course of 5 days, 10 women come and they tell these stories to the royal couple. And so the stories that we hear are the stories being told within the frame narrative of the Tale of Tales.
By some fascinatingly named women.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about them.
So it's like lame Ziza, twisted Sika, goitered Maneka, big nose Tolia, hunchback Popa, drooling Antonella, snout face Sunella, cross-eyed Pola, mangy Cinemeltia, and shitty Icoma.
Which, we mentioned that there was going to be some racism, some violence, and some raunchiness, but we forgot to mention the misogyny.
Yep, a bunch of disgusting old ladies. So thank you for that, Geoff. That like quick little recap. It's like, all right, the frame has been set. So in different episodes over the years, we've told sporadic tales, including on day one, you hear the story of the Cinderella cat, which was one of our first episodes.
Mm-hmm. And that story is wild. I love that Cinderella variation. As our first episode, maybe it's actually it's pretty good. Probably not one of our best nowadays, like considering it was our first episode. Well, second episode, first real episode.
Yeah. I'll have to re-listen to it, see how it holds up.
Yeah. But, we were still learning some things probably. But anyway, yeah, I just remember, I loved that story. It was so funny. So crazy.
We've also done Sun, Moon, and Talia. That is a Sleeping Beauty story. It's crazy because we kind of told Sleeping Beauty, I think in our first year of podcasting, and that was one that didn't turn into a series. We hadn't started doing series yet. And so, I don't know. Maybe we'll have to revisit Sleeping Beauty stories.
Maybe.
So yeah, we did Sun, Moon, and Talia. And we also retold The Crow, because that was one of the ones that was the black, white, red that went with the 3 citrons. And we also, in one of those episodes, briefly recapped The Little Slave Girl, which was the only Snow White tail type inside of the Tale of Tales. And so we briefly recapped it because it does not include the red, white, and black. And so it's just funny because, it just got kind of a brief mention, even though we were doing a Snow White project. But interestingly, that is also one of the only stories that includes mention of slaves. So I'm we'll hold on to all of this information. But before we get too far into the tale that I'm going to tell today, I wanted to say some quotes that are in regards to the frame narrative, because one thing that is frustrating in podcasting is that as new books, new scholarship and stuff comes out, I'm just oh, I want to somehow take that and put all those quotes over there, because I'm oh, this is such good stuff to back up things that we talked about. This is good scholarship. And so I wanted to have you guys get a little taste, a little sampling of what's inside Specters of the Marvelous. And this is in chapter 1, because she has the book divided up. It's in chronological order, chapters on different big storytellers. So the first one is Giambattista Basile. So I'm all of this from this episode is just chapter 1. So maybe we'll do other episodes featuring this book. We shall see. But first I wanted to say this one quote. Collectively, these characters, especially the female slaves, condense dominant beliefs about slaves in the contemporary Italian cultural imagination. Prone to duplicity and thievery, generally untrustworthy, often willing to use pregnancy to better their situations, linguistically deficit, and deserving of unchecked physical and verbal abuse. And so it's important to note that this is in regards to female slaves, because today the story that I'm going to be talking about are going to be male. There's one male slave, but there's two tales. One of them I'm not going to tell, but that's why I pluralized it, because there's multiple male slaves in the book, but they're the same tale type. So I'm just going to be retelling one of them, because we'll see that the way that Giambattista Basile treats female slaves or shows female slaves is different than male slaves. And there are cultural reasons for the time why that is, which is what is so great, I think, about the Specters of the Marvelous, is that this author is looking at the time period itself instead of just saying retroactively today, oh, if we look back, we can tell that this story was racist. It's yeah, sure. Good. Well spotted. But she shows why and how the views of the time really shape that, and how the racism is different throughout time. Fascinating. Everybody gets to have slightly different versions of racism. Fantastic. Just what you want to see. I'm being sarcastic in case anybody's reading this in captioned. Anyway, so I'm going to be retelling the story of the golden trunk. There was once a vegetable farmer who was very, very poor. No matter what he did, he was always like barely able to feed his family. No money going on with them, which I was like, no food to feed your family, but you grow vegetables. You should have vegetables to feed your Just kidding. So anyway, one day he went out and he bought 3 little pigs. Don't get crazy. Like 3 little pigs. It's not that story.
Oh, too bad.
But he bought 3 little pigs, sows, so female pigs, to give to each one of his daughters so that they could like raise them up and they could each then have like a pig for their dowry. That was like the best that he could do for them, is like, here's a piglet. Good luck, whatever happens to your piglet. Like, we'll hopefully help you with your life in the future. And so the 2 older sisters, they took their little pigs to go graze in a lovely pasture, but they didn't want their little sister, Parmitella, to go with them. And so they just sent their younger sister off to graze her sow like somewhere else. So she took her little pig into the woods where at least they would be in some shade, and they wandered for a little ways until they happened upon this like little fountain that, you know, had this nice little stream that they could drink from. And she was looking around and she saw a tree that had golden leaves. Not the color golden leaves, Jeffrey. Actual, for real, golden leaves.
Nice.
And she was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So she went and plucked just 1 leaf off of this tree with golden leaves. And she took it back home and she gave it to her father. And her father was like, oh my gosh, like, this is real gold. I can like do something with it. And so he, you know, went to the village and he was able to get some money, and it allowed him to have enough money to fix up a couple holes that they had like in the house. And the next day when she took her pig out to graze, she did it again. She grabbed another leaf and brought it back to her dad. And slowly over time, they were able to like better and better, like improve their situation. And her father was like, oh no, honey, like what you need to do, wherever you're finding like these leaves, you need to go and you need to collect every single one of them. You need to get all of them. And she said to her father, take this 1 leaf, sir, and ask no more, or your fortune will be ruined. But her father kept bugging her and kept bugging her. And eventually this tree was completely bare. It said, when autumn had passed, she realized that the tree had a great golden trunk that she wouldn't be able to pull up with her hands. And so she went home and returned with a hatchet. And because she's like, well, my dad keeps bugging me for more stuff. So like, I might as well, like, now that this tree has nothing left to get, I was like, is this the giving tree? Where it's like, oh, I took all the leaves off. Now, how do I use up the rest of it? Anyway, and okay, so you'll find this like fascinating as a person who knows something or another about rocks. So she like chops into the trunk of the tree, and basically like the trunk of the tree, it's like hollowed out geode, basically. And when she looked down into the hollowed out part, she could see that there was a staircase underneath that like wound down, which I'm like, my dad who's obsessed with rocks, like he would lose it. He would absolutely be like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And so she decided that she was gonna, you know, walk down that staircase and see what's up with that. So she slowly started walking down this staircase, and at first it was just really large and terribly dark. And she just kept walking forward until suddenly it kind of like opened up in front of her to be this lovely like plain, back to being like fields and stuff, which I'm like, how does that work? It's fine. It's magical. It's a fairy tale.
Yeah, magic.
And she could see a palace like in front of her. And as she was walking and it was getting lighter, and she looked down and realized that she was stepping on gold and silver as far as the eye can see, and then pearls and precious stones. So I'm assuming that this tree had golden leaves because like it was soaking it up through its roots.
Yeah. That's how it works. Yeah.
So anyway, Parmitella stared at all of this like lavish riches in front of her, and she was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. She's like getting closer to this palace, and she's seeing like it has all these paintings, all this fine stuff, but she hadn't seen any people. And so she just kind of like wandered around everywhere. and was just like looking at all the marvelous things until she found this lovely table set for a meal. And her stomach started to rumble a little bit and she didn't see anybody nearby. And so she sat down at the table and it said, began to dig in like a great lord. But as she was chewing, in came a handsome slave. And when she saw this person had like come in, she like jumped up like she was going to like run off to go. And he was like, stop, don't leave. I want you for my wife and I'll make you the happiest woman in the world. And Parmetella was like really, really scared, but it says she nevertheless took heart when she heard this nice promise, especially because like nobody else was around. And so in theory, this was his palace, even though he was clearly a slave. I will pause for a moment here to tell you the reason why he was quote unquote clearly a slave was because, can you guess, Geoff?
The color of his skin.
Yep. It goes without saying that the reason why she knew like immediately that he was a slave and not the, like, I was going to say master of the house, but that is the language of slavery, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That he wasn't lord of the house or whatever is because he was black. They're like, oh, it goes without saying. But because he was the only person there, she was like, okay, I'll marry you. Well, especially because like she was a super poor farm girl. Even if he just was just a slave that worked in this big empty palace, like, I don't know, has better food options than where she was at. So yeah, might as well. Anyway, so it says she was immediately given a diamond carriage pulled by 4 golden horses with emerald and ruby wings, which took her for a ride in the air to amuse her. So, pretty incredible stuff going on underneath this tree, the golden trunk. That's why it's called the golden trunk. That was the titular golden trunk, and I didn't point it out, and I do apologize for that.
Thank you for writing this wrong.
This grievous wrong. So anyway, it said that she was also given personal maids and a number of monkeys wearing golden robes who immediately began, it said, and as personal maids, she was given a number of monkeys wearing golden robes who immediately began to dress her from head to toe as elegantly as a spider so that she looked like a queen. So I do want to point out that the women who are like her attendants, who normally in a royal court would be like her ladies in waiting, were monkeys. So please take note of that. And again, I apologize. So when night fell, which I don't know how they knew that it was night. How's light getting into them? Are they underground or not? I don't know what's happening. Anyway, night fell. It said, and the sun, wanting to sleep on the shores of the river of India, unbothered by horseflies, put out the light. Oh, Giambattista Basile.
Beautiful.
Always the turn of phrase. Anyway, it said that the slave said to her, my darling, if you want to go nighty-night, love it, get into this bed. And after you wrap yourself up in the sheets, put out the candle and be careful to do as I tell you if you don't want to tangle things up. Tangle things up, meaning if we don't want things to go badly.
I thought it meant like literally like the sheet to get wrapped around your leg, kind of weird. Like that happens to me. I'd be like, I'd be open to some advice like that.
But anyway, things are about to get a little graphic.
Okay.
They're a little crass. Anyway, so Parmetella did exactly what she was told and fell asleep. But no sooner had her eyes been sprinkled with poppy dust than the slave, who had now become a beautiful young man, got into bed by her side. So when it said that he had become a beautiful young man, later on it's going to be a little more explicit and specific that he is black during the day and white at night, which people might remember that in the tale of Cupid and Psyche, it's like he's a monster during the daytime, but a god at night.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening here, except that the monster is that he's a black man.
Yikes.
We can all hear how racist that is. I hope. I hope everyone heard how racist that was. So, anyway, she started to wake up because she felt her wool being carded without a comb. Geoff didn't like that.
Oh, no.
So it says, she felt her wool being carded without a comb and thought she would die of fright. But when she realized that it was merely a civil war, so I'm like, what? She kept still under the blows.
Gosh.
I'm like, Giambattista Basile, I don't like this. Chrissy, wake up. I don't like this.
For someone who has a characteristically good way with words, unlike me just now, that sentence made no sense. But someone who's, well known to be good with words, he sure phrased that in like the worst way. Not the worst way possible, but not near the best either. There's so many other ways he could have worded
Didn't
that.
make me feel comfortable at all. And it says, but before dawn came out to look for some fresh eggs to appease her little old lover. I love how like the sun and the dawn both are these like anthropomorphic figures. The slave jumped out of bed and got back his dark veneer. So he stopped being white and went back to being a black man. And left Parmetella quite eager to know what sort of glutton had sucked up the very first egg of such a pretty spring chicken as herself. Geoff isn't having a good time. Man, I wish that we did have like a video podcast stream, because your face when you're like, man. I hated this. Anyway, the reason why I do want to include this, even though it's like disgusting, is that oftentimes Black men were treated as if they were like hypersexual. And that's kind of, I feel like, being represented here, that it's like you have this guy that she doesn't know him. And in the night, she can't see him. She just knows who was in the house with her. And this is happening. And it's very purposeful on the part of like the storyteller. So again, next night arrives. She went to bed and put out the candle the same as she did the night before. And the young man came and was next to her. And it said after he grew tired of romping around and fell asleep, she took out a flint she had prepared, stuck it on some tinder, flared up the match, and lit the candle so that she could get a look at him. And then again, this is where it becomes very explicit, the like color of the people, or the one person that we're talking about. It said, then she lifted up the covers and saw that the ebony had turned to ivory, the caviar to the milkiest white, and the coal to whitewash. And when she realized, oh, this isn't a black man, this is a beautiful white man, she suddenly felt like complete relief to know that like, oh, okay, things are like better than I thought that they were. But at the moment that she's staring at his like beautiful form, it's considering and contemplating the most beautiful brush stroke that nature had ever given to its canvas of marvels. Do you think your wife ever looks at you and thinks that?
Not while I'm sleeping, that's for sure.
Why? Do you have your mouth hanging open?
Probably.
Drool sliding down your...
My eyes like half open, like staring at her. Just kidding. I don't sleep like that, but I know someone who does.
Man, my mom, when I would blow on his eyes to get him to close them while he was asleep because I didn't want to wake him up, she thought I was like being mean. She was like, leave him alone. I'm like, I am. His eyeballs are going to dry out.
Yeah, I'm trying to save his eyes from being so dry.
I'm helping. So in that moment, as she's like staring down at him, he suddenly wakes up, as opposed to in like Cupid and Psyche when some of the wax from her candle like falls on him and like burns him and he like jumps up. And this one, he just like wakes up to her like hunched over staring at him.
The light of a candle. Yeah. And it's also in Cupid and Psyche, I remember too, is like very much like, you can't look at me during so she was breaking a rule that was explicitly stated. Where in this one, there was no such thing. And it's like there were consequences for doing that in Cupid and Psyche as well. So I'm interested to see now that it's like such a strong parallel. It's like, but where is it going? I have a feeling not in the same direction.
Actually, you'd be wrong. It's going very much in the same direction as Cupid and Psyche. Because he wakes up and like before he had said, do exactly what I say if you don't want to tangle things up. And so now things are about to get tangled up. So he wakes up and he sees her looking at him and he's like, no, now I'll have to do penance for another 7 years because of you, since you wanted to stick your nose into my secrets with such curiosity. Ladies aren't allowed to be curious. That's a true fact. So he was like, basically like, go back to your rags that you were wearing. Get away from here. I don't want to see you again. You're disgusting me. And it said, and as he was saying this, he slipped away like quicksilver. And so obviously, you know, she's devastated. She's like, no, I was married to this beautiful man, but I looked at him in the night to see who he was. I'm such an idiot. That whole thing is like irritating to me because it's like, what? You should just let a stranger do whatever he wants to in the night? No, creepy. Like that's SA. I don't like it.
Yeah. It's also weird because there's not like the same degree of like internal consistency as there is with Cupid and Psyche, where it's like, he tells her, I mean, I know he said like, oh, do exactly as I say so we don't get tangled up. I mean, maybe, I don't know if you skipped or if it says in the thing about like, does he say not to look at her, that she can't look, or not to look at him?
No, it's basically just says like wrap yourself up in your sheets and turn off the lights and be careful to do all that stuff that I say or things will get tangled up. So he doesn't say like never look on my form at night or Yeah,
because it's also like, but, and also in this story, I mean, maybe, I don't know, it just seems like such a stretch, but maybe it's just because of me and the place and the culture that I'm in right now, that it would be like, because in Cupid and Psyche that he said, don't look at me in the night, whatever you do, that makes you curious. Like, why can't I look at you in the night?
Yeah.
And so like that would then like, that idea, because you've been told not to do it, the idea of doing it is in your head and you're like, it makes it harder not to. It makes you more curious to want to. Whereas in this case, it was like, what inspired her to do that?
Yeah.
You know?
And I guess also, I do want to back up like what I was saying, like about, I mean, it feels like it's SA to me, except that he asked her to marry him and she like agreed to marry him. And she's awake when this is happening. And things were, I was going to say like ideas about like what consent was and what wasn't consent were also different and are also culturally based. So I think like the point where it's really like, I'm like, oh, this guy was gross. Like, so don't be, because like what's gross about it to me is like the creepiness factor of like him being like, wrap yourself up in your sheets and turn off the light. Don't look at me. And then it seems like he's just doing whatever he wants to her. So I'm like rethinking how I feel about the story in this moment, but also back to like what we were saying, like about, the directions not being like entirely clear and her not knowing. That usually irritates me in stories like this, like in like Hans my Hedgehog and stuff, where the women are gonna be like, oh, now a bad thing's happening. It's all your fault. And it's like, well, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
If it's not, if I don't know what I'm actually promising not to do, or like directions are unclear, why am I being in trouble for it? But alas, here we are in trouble for it. So he, flies off quick as quicksilver, and she's like, oh no, and is, crying and sorry that she ever did what she did. So she's on her way, like leaving the like underground grotto area, something, and she comes across a fairy. I wanted it to be a hag and a crag, but it's fine. It can be a fairy. Anyway, so the fairy sees her and is like, oh, why are you crying so much? You're making me like want to cry. You're crying so much. And so she kind of like explained her predicament and all of the stuff that was like going on to like this fairy. And the fairy was like, oh, honey, listen, you can still get this guy. She says you can still cross over the bridge of hair, which is a reference to basically this idea that there is like a bridge that you can get out of hell from, but it's like as thin as a piece of hair and flatter than a sword. But if your soul is light enough to like cross over it, then like it might be impossible, but there's a chance. So anyway, so the fairy's like, you can cross over this bridge of hair, but you have to listen to me and I'll tell you how to keep yourself from danger. You need to take 7 spindles, 7 figs, this jar of honey. I guess she hands her a jar of honey. And these 7 pairs of iron shoes, and you need to walk without stopping until they're worn out, which we've seen this in like West of the Sun or East of the Sun, West of the Moon, where she's like wearing, is it that? It might be Hans my Hedgehog. Ooh, hard to tell. This is a common thing that pops up in fairy tales, these iron shoes that you walk so much that you wear out the bottom. So she's been given 7 of those. And she's told to walk without stopping until all of those shoes get worn out. And then you'll see 7 women spinning from the balcony of a house, and like their thread is going to go all the way to the ground. And their thread is going to be wound on dead people's bones. These are witches or ogres. There's like they're creatures. So women, we're using that word very loosely. These are creeps, freaks, woodsy creatures like ogres. And so the fairy says, when you see like these women with their spindles, but their spindles are dead people's bones, stay hidden and like really quiet. And when the thread is lowered, take the bone off and then attach the honey smeared spindle in its place, like with a fig as like, I guess like the spindle holder. Like, so she's making basically a spindle holder, but with this like honey and figs.
Uh-huh.
And the fairy says, so that when they pull those up and they taste the sweetness, they're going to say, oh, may whoever sweetened my little mouth find their little fortune sweetened too. But don't say anything. Stay hidden. And one of them might say, oh, you who have brought me these sweet things, show yourself. But you need to answer, I don't want to because you'll eat me. And they'll say, I won't eat you. May God save my serving spoon. But don't believe them. Don't believe them no matter what they promise, even if they say, I won't eat you. May God save my spit. Don't answer them even if they say, I won't eat you. May God save my broom. Don't believe them until they say, may God save thunder and lightning. I won't eat you. Because thunder and lightning is the name of the guy. This is when we find out his name is Thunder and Lightning, which
pretty awesome.
It kind of evokes this like God image, like kind of hearkening back to that kind of like idea of like he's otherworldly.
Thor, Zeus.
And so yeah, when those ladies say, may God save thunder and lightning, I won't eat you, then you can climb out and be sure that they're not going to eat you. So I'll save us all the trouble of telling you that she did all that. She walked the 7 iron shoes to pieces, found these ogre ladies with their bones. Everything played out exactly as it was supposed to. It said, after 1,000 peekaboos and hide and seeks, the oath of thunder and lightning was finally uttered, and she climbed up and showed herself. And then it's so funny because then all 7 of these ogre women shouted out, oh, you treacherous bitch. You're the reason our brother has been in the grotto for 7 years and now 7 more years, far away from us with the body of a slave. So it seems that like that 7 years of penance that he had to do, it passed all while she was like on this journey. I'm assuming because it was like 7 a year per
set of sure. Yeah. Shoe.
You said sure, but I liked it.
Yeah. A year per shoe.
Yep.
Set of shoes. Pair of shoes is what we call them.
Yep, we do. Or shures, as you call them. Anyway, so these old ladies, these ogre ladies, they're not happy with her. So he's their brother. And so these sisters tell her, like, okay, you might have extracted an oath from us that we're not going to hurt you, but our mom is about to come home and you best believe that she is going to mess you up. She is like not cool with you. So they're like, crouch down behind that cupboard. And when our mother, who without a doubt would gobble you right up, comes in, go up behind her. Oh, Geoff, I forgot about this part. But I want you to visualize this in your mind. I want everybody to visualize this in their mind.
Okay, I'll close my eyes and get my visualization started.
I'll read it straight for you. So, crouch down behind that cupboard, and when our mother, who without a doubt would gobble you right up, comes in, go up behind her and grab her tits. 1 second, I have to stop laughing enough to read it. Which she carries like saddlebags on her shoulders.
Oh no. Which is why you have to go up behind her.
and then pull as hard as you can. And don't let go until she swears on thunder and lightning that she won't hurt you. Oof, 1 second. Oh gosh, a second. Oh, I have to recover from that. Okay.
The thing about that, so this is something I don't even think I've told you, Katrina, a deep, dark secret. Just kidding. It's
I'm
not.
so scared right now.
But like, so I've gotten recently into like looking at old like old public domain art, like, so like engravings from like the 1700s or whatever, or like, it's like Gustave Doré or whatever, like who did this, like he did the scenes from the Bible and these like very intricate like wood carvings and stuff like that. But then there's some of them that are really cool that are like these, from like the 1700s or whatever, where they have, it's like a dictionary. I think it was in French. I can't remember what the French name is, but it's like a dictionary of demons, basically. Yes. And it has like illustrations. I sent you some from there. So I guess you did know this, but I don't know if you knew about that I was doing more extensive research into this public domain art. But like they often are drawing these like creatures. I don't know how to say this. In a way that's like appropriate, but
because we really need to be worried
hags,
about that.
Witches, but then even just like other like monstrous creatures, like they may have like the beak of a toucan and like the horns of a goat and like the eyes of like an ostrich or whatever, but then they'll still have like women's breasts that are just like ridiculously saggy, like long.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Long enough that they could chuck them over their shoulders,
they could
like
be
saddlebags.
Thrown over the shoulder like a continental soldier. And it's like, it's just like, it's happened so much. It's like so strange, to me, but it's kind of like, it feels very much like that's sort of that's one of the things of like, oh, this is a evil.
Yeah. Is that
like creature of some kind? Like that's one of the signifiers.
Their body is monstrous. Yeah.
It's weird.
Oh, but yes, no, it sounds exactly like that. So anyway, Parmetella did this. And after the mother swore on the fireplace shovel, the footstool, the clothes rack, the reel, and the dish rack, she swore on thunder and lightning. Man, I'd be swearing so much. And it said, and Parmetella let go of her tits and showed herself to the ogress. Yeah, who hadn't been able to see her up until that point because she was behind her.
Just take it off her back.
Anyway. So when the ogress finally saw her, she was like, "Oh my gosh, like it's you who ruined my son's life. I could kick myself, but you better dig a straight road, traitor, because the first time it rains, I'll have you thrown in a gutter stream." Love it. Anyway, so because this ogress had sworn on thunder and lightning that she wasn't going to like hurt the person who was tugging on her tits from behind, she was like, "Oh, now I have to come up with like a legitimate way that I can like harm you."
Yeah.
And so she decided that in like many of the stories that like we've retelled, she needs to put her through some trials and say to her like, "Oh, but if you don't get this trial done by the end of the day, I'm going to eat you." And so what she did was she took 12 sacks of beans that were all mixed and jumbled. So they were like, chickpeas, lima beans, I don't know, fava beans, kidney beans. There are so many beans.
Navy beans, which I think is actually just another name for one of the ones you already sent.
Anyway, 12 different types of beans, or 12 sacks all full of beans. And then she mixed all those beans together and, told her, "Separate these by the end of the day or I'm going to eat you." And so poor Parmetella, she sat at the foot of the sacks and just started crying and said, "That golden trunk has cost me so much. Like following that trail down has like cost me like so much of my life. This is horrible. This blackened heart has become a rag, and all because I saw a black face become white." Yipes. So she's just sitting there crying about how her life is horrible and everything. And all of a sudden, as she's like laying there, like sobbing, thunder and lightning appears. It says before her like a lightning bolt, which, yeah, that's his name. Anyway, so he had just finished his 7-year period of exile that he like had to do, and it was coming home, and he saw her. And at first he was really angry to see her because he was like, "It's your fault that for the last like 7 years I wasn't able to come back." And it's like, okay, well, it seems like she wasn't the one who originally cursed you. So like whatever's going on, you have a lot going on, dude.
Yeah.
It's not all her. Anyway, but he started to feel sorry for her and he was like, okay, so stand up. I'll help you to sort out all of these beans. And so he immediately caused a river of ants to come forward and start sorting out all of the beans. And so when the ogre came back and she saw that the job was done, she immediately was like, I know exactly who helped you. Thunder and lightning came to help you. Fine, I guess that's his business. I don't know why he would help you. I don't know what he sees in you. You're the worst. You suck. I hate you. So then she was like, here's what you need to do. Take these ticks. So like mattress ticks, like the blankets. They're not blankets. They're I'm like, how do I explain what mattress ticks are? I mean, they're kind of like duvets, except that you're stuffing your own mattress.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about, right?
I don't. I've never heard of a mattress tick in my life.
It's
I'll
like
Google
when
it.
people would say, oh, it's time to make your bed.
Make
good night, sleep tight. When you'd like tighten the ropes underneath your like mattress, the mattress pad, like, because you'd have to make your own kind of like mattress by stuffing it full of stuff. That way you had something to sleep on. So anyway, so she handed her 12 of those and was like, I need you to fill this up with feathers by the end of the day, or I'm going to eat you. And she was like, oh no. And again, started like crying and sobbing because she's like, I'm going to be eaten. This is like horrible. And so Thunder and Lightning showed up and he was like, I loved it. He said, don't cry, traitor. Obviously, he's still upset with her. But he says, here's what you need to do. I need you to kind of like mess up your hair and look like a wretch. And I need you to lay down on the ground, sobbing like fountains of tears and scream that the king of the birds is dead. And she was like, okay, cool. So she laid on the ground and started like crying and screaming about like, oh, it's so horrible. It's so sad. The king of the birds is dead. And all of the birds in the kingdom heard her wailing and crying, thought she was telling the truth. They were all so upset that they started tearing their feathers out in sorrow that the king of the birds had died. And so once they'd ripped out, they like darkened the sky with how many birds had like showed up. And so once they had taken all of their feathers off and all their feathers were down on the ground, she picked them all up and stuffed the 12 mattress ticks full of these feathers. So obviously the ogress came back and saw what had happened. And she was like, oh my gosh, Thunder and Lightning, stop. It says you're getting on my nerves. I love it. But I'll be dragged around on a monkey's tail if I don't trap her someplace where she won't be able to get away from me. So then she went up to Parmetella and said, okay, I need you to run. I need you to head on down to my sister's house and tell her to send me some musical instruments because I'm going to marry off Thunder and Lightning and we need to get ready for the wedding. He's not marrying Parmetella. That's not who they're getting the wedding ready for.
Right.
In case people were wondering. But she's like, head down to my sister's house and tell her we need instruments for this wedding. Once you do that, maybe we'll be square. I don't know. So Parmetella was like, okay, I'll go do that. So she starts heading down to the sister's house. Well, the sister is also an ogre. And also the mother like quickly sent word to like her sister that she was sending Parmetella down to her. And she was like, she's going to ask you for instruments to play. No, don't do that. Just kill her and cook her up and then bring her to the wedding so that we can all eat her at the wedding. Because, I mean, we got to plan the wedding somehow. Anyway, so Parmetella was excited to be doing something that was so easy, just like going down the hill to get some instruments. She was like, oh, that's pretty easy. Like, I can do that. Anyway, so she's all happy, like going down. And she ran into Thunder and Lightning. And he saw her hurrying along and he was like, where are you going? Where are you running off to? And she told him and he was like, oh, no, are you stupid? Said, don't you see that you're going to be slaughtered? You're making your own shackles, you're sharpening your own knife, and you're measuring out your own poison. Since you're being sent to the ogress so that she can eat you. Can't you see that? And she was like, wait, what? This is a shocking surprise to me. Like, girl, come on. You're in danger. So he says, take this loaf of bread that I have, take this bundle of hay, and take this stone. And when you get to my aunt's house, you'll see that there is a hound that will come at you barking and try to bite you. this is another like really familiar motif of like befriending a bunch of stuff. There are some Baba Yaga tales that are like this. A lot of witch in the wood stories that like mirror like this kind of thing. So he's like, a hound will come barking at you and it'll try to bite you. So give it this loaf of bread and you'll shut its trap. And then once you're past the dog, you'll find an untied horse that will try to run up and kick you and trample you. Give it this hay and then bind up its hooves so that it like can't kick you. And then finally, you'll find a door that will slam continuously. Prop it open with this stone and you'll take away its strength, which I'm like, oh, it's a weird door. Anyway, then go upstairs and you'll find my aunt, the ogress, and she's holding a baby girl in her arms. Here comes the infanticide, y'all.
Oh, no. Thanks for the warning, though.
It's an ogre baby, so do we care less about it? I don't know. I don't know. Up for debate. Anyway, Thunder and Lightning said, you'll find the ogress holding a baby girl in her arms. She'll already have the oven lit so that she can roast you, like right when you get in the house. So if she says, hold this baby and wait while I go upstairs to get the instruments, what you need to know is what she's really doing is she's going upstairs to sharpen her fangs so that when she comes back downstairs, she'll be able to like tear you into little pieces. So what you need to do is throw her little daughter into the oven. Yeah. And it says, you can do it without mercy since she's just ogre meat.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, bro, that's like...
Your cousin.
Your cousin.
Your baby cousin.
Yeah, I'm like, aren't you an ogre? But he's like not. I don't understand.
It's not hereditary.
Apparently being an ogre is only something that women can be.
Ooh, don't like that. Because it is like that is interesting. There's strong evidence to support that claim, Katrina, and I don't like that.
Yeah,
it's because it is like, a girl baby.
Yeah, and all of his sisters,
his aunt, his sisters
are ogres. Yeah. His mom's an ogre. His aunt's an ogre. So I'm like, suspicious about what that says. Anyway, so he says, chuck her into the oven, like without mercy, and you need to then immediately leave back like the way that you came. He says, like, be warned that the instruments are in a box that you must not open unless you want trouble, but he doesn't say, like, where the box of instruments. I'm like, is it by the back door? Because she's never handed the box of instruments, you know what I mean? Because the ogress, like, quote unquote, went upstairs to get them.
But she wasn't getting them.
But
where are they? We don't know. It never says. Plot hole.
But anyway, so grab those instruments, but they're in a box. Don't open the box. And so Parmetella, it says, did everything that her lover had advised her to do, but as she was returning with the instruments, she opened the box.
Why?
Women.
I know why.
Women, they be too curious. Like so many Pandoras. Like so many Pandoras. And as you might recall, in the story of Cupid and Psyche, Psyche did the exact same thing where she like had a box to return from Cupid's mom's sister. And then she like opened it up.
Which would be Cupid's aunt.
Yeah.
I had forgotten that from Cupid and Psyche. So thank you for the reminder.
You're welcome. But yeah, she opens up the box, of course.
What's in the box?
So suddenly like a flute came out, bagpipes, recorder. Ooh, recorder, the devil's instrument.
That's why Ogre has it.
And so all of these just like flew out of the box and like up into the air and started making like a horrible sound. And so Parmetella was like running after these instruments, but they were clawing at her face. So I'm like, whoa, what kind
animated
of instruments are they? Yeah. So the ogress like heard all of this like goings on and stuff. And the ogress that was inside the house, like the aunt. And so she starts like calling out to like the window. Oh no, she starts calling out the window down to the door. From the window to the wow. No.
To the door.
So she starts crying out to the door, like, crush the traitor, smash her. And the door was like, well, I don't want to hurt this little girl.
I can't. There's a stone.
She propped me open. Yeah, with a stone. And so the ogress like yelled at the horse, like, trample her. And the horse was like, I don't want to trample her. She gave me some hay to chew on and tied up like the horse's like legs. So she did like 2 things.
But it was like too proud to like say that it got bested that way. So it's like, oh no, she gave me hay. Totally, that's the only reason.
That's the only reason, or else I'd totally do it. But she didn't tie me up. So finally the ogress like called out to the dog and was like, bite her, rip her, tear her open. And the dog's like, no, let the poor little girl go. She gave me some yummy bread. Does a good dog. So like Parmetella, though, she was like running after the instruments, like chasing them. And she ran into Thunder and Lightning, who then like yelled at her and was like, oh, traitor. When will you ever learn? And yeah, he basically was like, you're a cursed curiosity. It's always getting the best of you. So he like whistled and the instruments came to him and he closed them up in a box and he brought them to his mother for his wedding. And the ogress like looked over and saw Parmetella and she was like, what? Even my sister wouldn't help me? That's some bull crap. But she couldn't go down to yell at her sister. She didn't have time because just then the new bride had arrived and it said she was a plague, a cancer, a harpy, and an evil shadow with a pug nose and buck teeth. She was an owl, a cracked barrel, and stiff as a pole. So that if you put 100 flowers and garlands on her, she would have looked like a tavern that had just opened. Wow.
What a way to have your future bride described to you.
Yeah. The ogre, future mother-in-law, was preparing a big banquet for her. And it said since her intentions were bad, she had the table sat near a well where she placed her 7 daughters, each with a torch in their hand. And she gave Parmetella 2 torches and had her sit on the edge of the well with the idea that if she got sleepy, then, maybe she'll fall to the bottom and die. We'll see. Accidents happen. It says, while the food was coming and going and the blood was beginning to heat up, Thunder and Lightning, who was sitting there like an unwilling bride, said to Parmetella, oh, traitor, do you love me? And she answered, all the way up to the terrace. And he replied, if you love me, give me a kiss. And she said, God help me, may it never be. May the heavens preserve that fine thing sitting next to you 100 years with health and baby boys. So she's trying to have like a good humor about it. The fact that this guy that she loves and lost and whatever is now marrying this like ogre woman. But the bride, when she heard this, she answered, it's quite clear that you'll always be a wretch, even if you lived 100 years. If you find kissing such a handsome young man disgusting, I myself let a shepherd smooch me for 2 chestnuts. Dang, girls, don't tell us about your OnlyFans. Jeez. And so the bridegroom, Thunder and Lightning, like when he heard her say that, he was like, girl, what in the heck? It said he flew into a rage and swelled up like a toad. So the food that he was eating got stuck in his throat.
Oh.
So he was apparently finding this to be, quote, a tough pill to swallow. Anyway, so when the tables were being like cleared out, he dismissed his mother and his sister. Then he and his new bride and Parmetella left together before going to bed. Girl, what? What kind of 3-way is this? Oh, I think it was because now, like, I guess Parmetella works for the family. So is she now enslaved to them, indebted to them? I don't know. But it said he was having Parmetella take off his shoes and he turned to his bride and said, my wife, did you see how this fussy girl refused to give me a kiss? And the bride was like, oh, yeah, I did. And she's wrong for that. You're such a handsome man. Me, I'd kiss anybody. I mean, I would let the boy who looks after our sheep kiss me for 2 chestnuts. Girl, you have one story. Stop telling it. So at this, Thunder and Lightning couldn't contain his anger any longer. And with lightning flashes of disdain and thunderbolts of action, said when the mustard reached his nostrils, he grabbed a knife, and I do apologize for this, slit his wife's throat.
Yo.
Then he dug a grave in the cellar and buried her there. And hugging Parmetella to him said, you are my joy. You are the flower of all women.
Oh my gosh.
The mirror of all honorable ladies. And so turn your eyes to me, give me your hand, offer me your mouth, join your heart to mine. For I want to be yours as long as the world is still the world. It said, and as he was saying this, they went to bed and they remained there, taking their pleasure until the sun released its horses of fire from the barn of water and sent them to pasture in the fields sown by dawn.
Oh, I forgot all those like really flowery terms that he would use to describe the sun rising or setting.
Yeah, it was
I do
a lot.
love it though, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's a lot. Anyway, so when the mother-in-law woke up, which I don't know who's married to who's properly married anymore, because I think they were properly married before, but then he married this ogre lady and he murdered her, dug a ditch, and then went to bed with this lady. Are they properly married? I don't know. This doesn't seem like a Christian marriage.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with the
ogre
marital customs,
wedding laws. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So when the ogress mother-in-law came in with fresh eggs to give the newlyweds, she said, "Blessed are those who marry and take a mother-in-law." And then she looked down and she saw that it was Parmetella in her arms, or in her son's arms, and she was like, "What in the crap?" And so immediately she ran to her sister's house to figure out how they could orchestrate a way to get rid of this speck in their eyes. But when she got to her sister's house, she discovered that out of grief for the daughter who had been baked in the oven, her sister had thrown herself in two, and the stink of something burning was infecting the whole neighborhood.
Oh, jeez.
And so, in her despair, the ogress decided to turn herself into a ram, and I do apologize for this. Banged her head against the wall so many times that her brains came splattering out.
Oh, gosh. So crazy. It really is. That Tarantino comparison. Like, I forget how apt it actually is.
But it's like, Giambattista Basile, like, goodness gracious, like, what are you on about? Are you okay? I'll tell you that I'm like, and here's like the final sentence of the whole thing. When thunder and lightning had restored peace between Parmetella and his sisters, they were all happy and content, proving the truth of the saying, "Those who resist win." I'm like, is that proving the truth of that? I don't know. Because I feel like the mother-in-law was resisting pretty hard, and I don't feel like she won anything.
I agree.
Anyway, so that is the story of the Golden Trunk.
Wild.
I read this like for two reasons. One, we've already talked about a lot of the racism inside of the frame tale and how Black women were portrayed in like these stories. But I also wanted to look at how they viewed men in these stories, because how men who were slaves were viewed was different. And then also how they're set up in this story. And there was this cultural idea that in Specters of the Marvelous, they talk about a lot, which is this idea at the time, literarily, about being a slave to love. And so, like, in some ways, this story is more metaphorically about that. He wasn't a slave in the regular sense. It was in a metaphorical sense, a slave of love, that he had to like get married to this person and serve them and be with them. So there's that. But then there's also this idea of Blackness as a curse that was prevalent as an idea.
Yeah.
So Kimberly J. Lau says, dominant ideas about Blackness, so clear in Basile's descriptions of Lucia being like the slave woman.
From the frame story.
And Georgia, another woman from a different story, as ugly, deceptive, servile, reinforces the tale's equation of Blackness with being punished or living in a cursed state. An equation echoed in long-standing ideologies that justified slavery on purely racial and ethnic grounds. And then she quotes another author, Epstein, by saying, "And so there is a kind of declension from bad luck to sin to force as evolving, overlapping, even mutually confirming explanations for slavery. Ethnicity or color came to be a proxy for bad luck. In more complex ways, color also became a proxy for sin itself, as people came to believe that belonging to certain ethnic groups or even being a particular color justified enslavement. And then going back to Kimberly J. That blackness and not slavery is the real curse or punishment in these tales is clear in the fact that the handsome slaves retain their humanity and male privilege throughout. They continue to function as masters of their palaces, including having slaves of their own, and they return to whiteness at night when they join the heroine in bed. And so it's interesting to think about these men when they have been cursed, because they were not cursed to be slaves. Because if you'll remember at the beginning of the story, he's living in this gorgeous palace. He's living in all this luxury. He's the only person there. So it's like the only thing that was making him a slave, quote unquote, like a slave, was more or less the blackness of him. It wasn't in how he, was being treated or like the work that he had to do or anything like that. It purely was his punishment was less about being a slave and more about just being black, because those two things in the culture were related to each other. And then it also shows this idea at the time that blackness itself was a curse, like a reason to treat people poorly. And obviously horrible. Don't like that. And I also wanted to retell that tale because it is one of those Cupid and Psyche tales that's very closely aligned with the like animal bridegroom tales, because we'll probably do another episode on this, because you'll see through time how that evolves, how like this story that has put as the cursed one, like the curse being like, oh, it's a black man. You'll see how it slowly morphs into being animals. And it's super, super interesting to read like why they evolved and how the culture that changed it, which the next group that like she focuses on, it's French, and how people's ideas about Black people and where the French had people enslaved shapes where that tale goes. And so, yeah, I just wanted to say to anybody who is interested in learning more about this or reading this book faster than Geoff and I get to episodes, I highly recommend Specters of the Marvelous, Race and the Development of the European Fairy Tale. I will say that if you're looking for like a casual read about like fairy tale scholarship, this is not a casual read. I will say that like the language is a lot more academic, but like so many references, so many notes, super fascinating book. And so if you're a person that is nerding out, like listening to our podcast, you might want to check it out. And if you don't want to buy a book, because I know from university presses, they're a little more expensive, encourage your local library to get a copy of this book so that you can read it, and then people who come after you in the library cycle can also get their hands on a copy. So if you have the ability to request books from your library, I highly recommend it.
Thank you for listening to The Fairy Tellers. If you enjoy what we're doing, please leave us a review or share us with your friends. For access to exclusive bonus content, consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/thefairytellers. Special thanks to Andy Forey for our music and to Clarice Inch for our artwork. And of course, a big thank you to all our patrons. Without all of you, this show wouldn't be possible.
Good stories pay little attention to cultural or linguistic frontiers. The student of story collections find themselves adrift on an ocean of stories, an ocean which is boundless, deep, and ceaseless in motion. Robert Irwin.
Yeah,
I'm
if
a
you
fan.
want,
I was just gonna say. That was so funny. What was I saying? Like, did I get it out of my mouth? Did I get it
You were
all
talking.
the way out?
Yeah, you're saying on. Well, I don't know. You're saying on.
Oh, watch it on YouTube.